If you don't know what Toolscreen is or haven't installed it yet, watch the video linked in the description first. There's also a Discord link there. Please use that if you have any issues or questions. This video is a detailed guide on configuring advanced Toolscreen settings. Check the timestamps or chapter markers to jump to a specific section. To change a mode's background from the purple to something else, go to Advanced, Modes, Thin, Background. There you have color, gradient, and image. If you want just a plain color for your background, you can use a color picker to select any color, or you can configure a different gradient with multiple colors, different animations, or you can just select an image file. Press a browse button to open a file picker and select an image file. Then go back to the game and the image will load. It works best with regular image and GIF files, but there's experimental support for MPEG files in 1.2.8. If you want to change the background for your other modes, just repeat the process. You go to wide mode, background, and then change it to an image, browse, select the file, and then go back to Minecraft. If you want to use the Ninjabrain Bot Overlay, first go to your Ninjabrain Bot settings and make sure that the OBS overlay is enabled. Go to Settings, OBS Overlay, and make sure that Enable Overlay is ticked. Once you've done this, you can go back to your game, go Control-I, Basic, and make sure that Ninjabrain Bot Overlay is enabled. Do F3C in a world to see the overlay. To configure it, go to Advanced, Images, and Ninjabrain Bot. To reposition the overlay, you can either click and drag it, or you can use the X and Y sliders. Here's an example of how you can configure the overlay. I'm going to set opacity to full, enable pixelated scaling, and temporarily turn the scale up so we can see what we're doing. I'm then going to crop to just the parts that I want to see. And then I'm going to go down to color key. I'm going to add a new color key. For Ninjabrain Bot default background, the color key that you should probably use here is 55, 60, 66. Then drag this slider to adjust how sensitive the color key is. You can then change the background color slider. I like this, so now I'm going to go back up to the top and reduce the scale. I can change where it's relative to, so if I want it in the middle of the screen, I can put it here. Any of these relative to settings, if it says viewport, that means it's relative to the game content. So for example, if I'm in thin mode, the center of the viewport is here, and top left of the viewport would be here. But if I'm in EyeZoom mode, the top of the viewport would be off the screen. So if you're configuring an overlay for EyeZoom mode, you probably want relative to screen. Top left screen would be up here. By default, resize animations are enabled, but only on OBS. On your screen, it's not actually animating, it's instant. There is a setting to disable hide animations in-game under the Settings tab in Advanced, but I don't recommend doing this, because you should be toggling thin a lot in runs and it's distracting to have the animation. If you want to turn it off entirely so it's not on stream either, go to the mode and go to Transition Settings, change the type to Cut. This affects transitions that go to this mode. So if you want to change it for everything, you need to go to every mode and set the transition setting to be cut. And now there's no resize animations. I'm going to make a mirror that shows the block entity's mob spawner value on my pie chart. I'm going to go to Add New Mirror, give it a name, then go to the modes that I want to use it in. I'm just going to do it in full screen. So I'm going to go to Modes, Full Screen, Mirrors, select Mirror, and then add the mob spawner mirror. Go back to mirrors, and I'm going to enable raw output so that I can see the mirror. I'm going to move the config out of the way. At the moment, the mirror is capturing the middle and outputting it to the middle. So I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to change the input capture zone to be relative to pie chart left, which is this section, the left column of numbers. We can see here that these numbers are being output into the middle of the screen. I'm going to temporarily increase the scale just so it's easier to see. Then I'm going to scroll back up and adjust the capture width and height to be exactly what I want it to be for one row of these numbers. The mob spawner and chest could switch place in the order of the numbers on the list, but unspecified is probably always going to be at the top, so we can ignore the top row. Let's adjust this capture zone to just be the second row, and then add a new one, also pie chart left, and adjust it to be 8 pixels more on the Y than the previous one. This captures the row below it. Now we want to scroll back up and add a target color. We're going to type in the exact value of the color that we're trying to target. You'll have to use an external color picking program to do this. For this example, the target color is 77, 225, 202. Once we've got that set, we can disable raw output. Now the number's being output in black, so we can go to the output color and change that to something else. Then you can go to the output position and set it to be relative to pie chart left. So now it's relative to the left column of the pie chart, and we do a negative X and Y offset for the output position to move it up onto the pie. You can customize the border thickness, but doing this does move the position of the number. For a number like this that changes, you'll want to use the dynamic border setting. You would only use a static one if you have something that's always the same shape, like a pie chart. Now let's make a more advanced mirror, changing the color of the timer from a static color to an animated rainbow. Add a new mirror, give it a name, go to Modes, Full Screen, Mirrors, then add the mirror. Go back to the mirror config, set the FPS to be real time, because we want the timer to update on every single frame, we don't want it to be delayed. Then we're going to enable raw output temporarily, move the config out of the way, go down to input position, set it relative to top right screen, increase the output scale temporarily, then go back up and adjust the capture width and height to cover the full timer. You might want to do this on a practice map that has a lot of playtime to make sure that it works with long numbers. Now add a target color. Use a color picking program to get the exact RGB value that you have on your timer. I'm going to set the target color to match exactly the RGB of my timer. In my case, it's 0, 252, 36. Then I'm going to disable raw output and I can see the timer in black. Then I'm going to enable gradient output. This is what we use to make the rainbow animation. I'm going to scroll down and increase the thickness of the border. And then I'm going to add color stops to the gradient. I'm going to set red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple. Going to remove the white. You can see that it's only showing orange and purple at the moment. That's because we haven't adjusted these sliders for the percentages of the gradient steps. If you want all the colors to be equally spread apart, you need to drag the sliders so that they're equally spread from 0 to 100. We have 6 different colors here. 100 divided by 6 is 16.6. So we're going to set each of these to be roughly 16% apart. The exact numbers don't really matter. I've set these numbers here. 80, the last one here, plus 16 would be 96, which is 4 away from being 100, which is the same as 0. So if you want to be slightly more accurate, you can increase each of these to match the percentages more accurately. Now I'm going to add an animation. I'm going to select slide. You can see the rainbow colors are sliding from the right over to the left. You can adjust the speed of the animation, and up here you can change the angle. Now we need to make it cover our original timer. I'm going to scroll down and set the output position to be relative to the top right of the screen. Decrease the scale back to 100%. You can see it's not quite aligned right. That's because the dynamic border is changing the position of it. So we can just change the X and Y offsets until it matches. Now I can unpause the game and see that I have a rainbow timer. If you're not using a dynamic border, you can keep the X and Y offset on 0 and it'll line up, but you might see some pixels bleeding from the original timer underneath it. In this case, you can see tiny bits of green. One way to fix this is to scroll up and increase the color sensitivity until the green is gone. If you want to use the rainbow timer in different modes like thin, you have to make a new mirror because the timer is at a different size and position. To configure rebinds, go to Inputs, Keyboard, Enable Key Rebinding, and Open Keyboard Layout. Right-click on a key to configure it. If you just want to change the key to be something else, do a full rebind, click on the key here, and then on your keyboard, press the key that you want it to become. So now, if I type G on my keyboard, it becomes P. This also means if I do F3 and G, it toggles pause on lost focus, which is F3P, rather than toggling chunk borders. To avoid this, you can do a split rebind, where it triggers G for the game keybinds, but it types the letter P. So now if I do F3G, it toggles chunk borders, but in chat it types P. If you want a hotkey to toggle your rebind so that you can type in chat, you can set a hotkey here. I set mine to L, so now when I type in chat, G is outputting P, but then I press L, and now G is outputting G. You can see whether the rebinds are currently enabled or not by this status here. I'm going to re-enable it, unbind this hotkey by clicking on it and then pressing clear, and back to the keyboard layout. If you want to output a custom Unicode character, you can click on custom, then paste in the character. Some characters are going to show up as just a question mark in here, but then you click apply and actually go to the game chat and press the key and it types the Unicode character. If you rebind a key like Alt to be something else, let's say H, then if I try to press Alt Tab to exit Minecraft, it won't let me because it thinks I'm pressing H Tab. To avoid this, you can enable the Allow System Alt Tab setting. There's also one for Alt F4. Now when I press Alt in chat, it's not typing anything, it's toggling to wide. This is because I haven't removed left Alt from my wide hotkey. I'm going to change my wide hotkey to be O, and now when I press left Alt, it outputs H. But then if I do Alt Tab, it tabs me out of the game. Resolve rebind targets for hotkeys. This setting means if you have Alt rebound to type H, and then you go to hotkeys, and you set a hotkey to be H, then pressing Alt will trigger that hotkey because Alt becomes H and then it uses this. If you don't want that to happen, you can just disable this setting. If you want a key to output a different character when holding a shift, go to Split Rebind, set the normal key for types, and then set the shift key for types shift. Now, if I type in chat, it types U. If I type while holding shift, it outputs E, and it triggers the H keybind for the game. An important note on triggers. This affects any key that has an action other than typing a character. So if you want to change hotbar slot or do F3G to toggle chunk borders, you want to delete a character with backspace or use home in search crafting, all of those require that the output is set to triggers. You can't have one of those just on types. Types only affects what character is typed in chat or in the recipe book. Now I'm going to add a window overlay for Spotify. Go to Window Overlays, add new, give it a name. Unlike mirrors, you don't need to go and manually add this to your mode. It automatically adds it to the mode that you're currently in. I'm in full screen mode right now, so this is automatically added to full screen. Now select the window that you want to capture from the drop down. Adjust the cropping to just the part that you want to capture. I'm going to increase the scale. Turn on pixelated scaling, going to move it up near the top left of my screen, then add a color key. Enable color key and add. It defaults to black, which is already correct for this. And then going to enable background and change the opacity. This is a bit big and the text is a bit pixelated, so I'm going to decrease the scale. If you want to include another part of the window, you have to make a new window capture. I'm going to name this Spotify 2, select the same window, and then apply the cropping for this as well. Increase the scale, add a color key. I'm going to turn on pixelated scaling and then click and drag it to where I want it to be and fix the scaling and then adjust it to the right pixel. Now I have a Spotify overlay that shows the current song and its progress. If you want higher quality overlays, you'll need to use a browser overlay. Go to Browser Overlays, add new browser overlay, give it a name, then type or paste a URL, press return to save it, and now it's showing the chat in the background. I can scroll down, enable transparent mode. This only works with some websites. If the website you're using doesn't support this transparent mode, then add a color key. For an active chat, I'm going to increase the FPS, decrease the scale, drag it over to the bottom left. I can add a background with half opacity. There's a lot of things you can do with browser overlays. You can even watch YouTube videos. To prevent a resize hotkey from triggering while your inventory or chat is open, go to Hotkeys, select the hotkey, required game states, untick any, and untick cursor free. Cursor free means that your cursor is visible on your screen. When you're in the world looking around, your cursor is grabbed. So now the hotkey works here, but anytime that my cursor is visible, the hotkey doesn't work. This includes my chat, inventory, and pause menu. There is no legal way to make a hotkey that differentiates between the pause menu and the inventory. They are both the same state. If your resize macro is set to a hotkey like G that does something when held with F3, like F3G to toggle chunk borders, you can go to exclusion keys. By default, F3 is added as an exclusion key here. So when you do F3G, it toggles chunk borders. When you just do G, it toggles the mode. If you want to change this, you can add and remove exclusion keys here. Trigger on release means that when you start holding down the key, it doesn't do anything. It only triggers when you release it. Trigger only when holding means that the mode is only active while you're holding down that key. When you let go, it goes back to your default mode. This is useful for hotkeys like Control B that would otherwise toggle the narrator. Some of the other hotkeys, you can change Control I to something else here. You can set a hotkey to toggle borderless mode, and you can toggle the visibility of image overlays or window overlays. There's also sensitivity hotkeys. I'm going to make a new hotkey for O. So now when I press O, I'm going to drag this slider. It takes me down to 0.008 times sense. When I press O, I'm now moving very slowly. By default, pressing O again doesn't do anything. If you want that behavior, then enable toggle. So I can press O to toggle it like a DPI switch. If you want a low sensitivity automatically applied when you enter EyeZoom mode, go to EyeZoom, sensitivity override, enable, and then change this slider to something low like 0.001. Now, when I go into EyeZoom mode, my cursor is very slow. I leave it, it's back to normal. If you want to use EyeZoom pie chart for preemptive in the stronghold, what you should do instead is go to the preemptive mode. Go to hotkeys, add new, find a key, target mode, preemptive. Now it takes me into this mode, which is like EyeZoom. It's the same resolution, but it has the pie chart, the entity counter, and there's no EyeZoom section on the left. And the sensitivity is normal. When I'm in EyeZoom mode, I have low sensitivity, then I go to preemptive and it's back to high. Or you can do your preemptive in the EyeZoom mode, but set a hotkey for sensitivity override without switching mode. The mouse sensitivity here, this affects how fast your mouse moves in normal modes like full screen. Changing this value does not break bow tie sensitivities. If you have the bow tie sense set in the game, you can change this to anything, and it affects your effective sensitivity without changing the actual sense that you have set in the game for Bowtie. Windows mouse speed, you can set this to a different value to affect how fast your cursor moves in menus. Changing this setting does not affect the sensitivity of your eye measurement, as you will always have raw input enabled. With Toolscreen, there's no reason to ever disable raw input. To customize the EyeZoom overlay, go to Advanced, Modes, EyeZoom. The width and height you should leave on default, 384 by 16384. The clone width affects how many of the game pixels are copied over to the magnifier, but 30 is good. Same for the height, the default of 1300 is fine. To change how many numbers show up on each side of the line, expand the default overlay and change the number here. To change the font size, scroll down to text settings, change auto font size to either per square auto font size, where the ones that can fill up more space will, or change it to manual font size, where you can drag this slider. If you want to change the font size without affecting the size of the boxes, untick link rectangle to font size. Then you have two sliders that separately control those. You can set a custom font path here, click browse and then select a custom TTF file. For any of the colors on the overlay, you can customize them here. The fourth column here is the alpha, also known as the opacity. If I lower the opacity of the pink, for example, you can see through the pink to the eye below it. If you want to reposition the magnifier, tick use custom position, and then you can adjust the width and height, as well as the X and Y, including moving it over to the other side. If you want to customize it even more, press add overlay, switch to this overlay, expand it, then you can browse to select an image file to use for the overlay. For this example, I picked an image overlay that was generated from a website, but it's not lined up with the pixels yet. I can see here it looks like there's 4 numbers between the white line and the edge of the eye pixel, but if I change back to the default overlay, it's only actually supposed to be 2. So I'm going to go to the custom overlay and set display mode to manual, then adjust the width and height. I'm going to drag these so that 2 lines up with where it was before. And then I'm going to tick clip to zoom area so that the parts that go out of the bounds get cut off. I'm going to do another eye measurement to make sure it's correct for different values. Here it's 9 pixels off. It's close enough, but I can see that it's 1 pixel too short. So I'm going to set this to slightly larger. Once I have the width perfect, I'm going to adjust the height so that the numbers look good. Now this overlay is finished. When Minecraft is in full screen and you try to screen share on Discord with an NVIDIA GPU, the screen share might not work properly. To avoid this, you can either play in windowed or borderless mode, or you can use the Toolscreen virtual camera. Go to Settings and enable virtual camera. If this option isn't available, you need to install OBS. You don't need to have OBS running, it just needs to be installed so that the virtual camera driver is available. Then in Discord, instead of screen sharing the Minecraft window, you screen share the virtual camera device. You can also use this as a video capture device source in OBS, if you have issues with the game capture source. Under Inputs and Mouse, you can enable custom cursors that change depending on the game state. By default, on the title screen and wall screen, it's an arrow, but then in a world, it's a crosshair. You can adjust the size of the crosshair, but as you can see, it doesn't look correct on OBS unless it's a multiple of 16. This is a bug with OBS. You can change to a different type of cursor here, different crosshairs, or you can open the cursor folder. This opens a folder in File Explorer. We can drag in a .cur or .ico file. Then when you tap back into the game, you'll see the cursor as an option in the drop-down. These custom cursors are more likely to scale properly even in OBS. If you want to increase the rate at which holding down F3F increases or decreases your render distance, go to Inputs, Keyboard, and then Key Repeat Start Delay and Key Repeat Delay. The start delay is how long you have to hold down a key before it starts repeating. I recommend setting this to at least 100 milliseconds. And the key repeat delay is how long between those repeats. You may experience lag if you set this to a low value like 1 millisecond, so you could try something a bit higher. I'm going to try 1. Now when I hold F3F, it goes up much faster. And the same for Shift F3F. If you set the start delay too low, this is what happens. You press a key and it registers multiple times every time you press it. If you get stuck on the pause menu, click the unpause button, then go back here and increase the start delay. If you want to use the same hotkey on your keyboard to resize thin in the overworld and wide in the nether, go to the hotkey, set the target mode to thin, and then add an alternative secondary mode. Find a hotkey for this. I'm going to do Alt-X, and then set this mode to be wide. Now, when I press Z, it toggles between thin and full screen, but if I press Alt-X, it toggles to wide, and now anytime I press Z, it toggles between wide and full screen. I can press Alt-X again to make it go back to thin, and if I'm in one of these secondary modes where it's resetting to wide, and I go back to the wall, when I enter a new world, it'll reset back to the default of thin. The global Toolscreen config folder is located here. In your user folder, go to .config and then Toolscreen inside that. If you want to override settings for a specific instance, go to that instance folder and in the .minecraft, make a new empty folder called Toolscreen. The next time you run Toolscreen on this instance, it'll store its files in there instead. Inside of every instance folder that uses Toolscreen, there's a pre-launch txt file. Whenever you launch the game, any text in this file will be executed as a command. For example, you can use this to automatically launch Ninjabrain Bot when you start your instance. You have to replace this path with the path to your Java WEXE, and replace this path with the path to the Ninjabrain Bot jar file. You can have multiple lines for multiple different commands, so you can have it open Jingle as well, or any other programs that you want. Development of Toolscreen is made possible thanks to these Patreon supporters: Blasted, Sammy B2, Nando, Tapel, Didoba, Harry, Julie, Palipa, Who is Maclord, and Yuppa. Link in the description. To everyone else, thanks for watching, and remember to join the Discord if you have any questions.